But what is Meteor but Fireball from heaven?
He's out of line, but he's right.
Hello.
So this appears to be the season of the nuts and gum together at last because, well, hi, I'm Pat, and nuts and gum together at last, Fireball and Meteor together at last, because we do have this one aspect, this weird little aspect, the Chain of Fitty Curses, which increases the critical strike damage of Meteor and Fireball by 60% and doubling that bonus against healthy targets. And the funny thing is, there's never really been a build where Meteor and Fireball could both shine together because they are both spenders. But thanks to the Starfall Coronet, and not gonna lie, every time I see that name, I think of Choco Cornets, and it's all over for me, man. The diabetes is winning. Anyway, thanks to Starfall Coronet, Meteor is now a cooldown with 2 charges, so now they belong together, and even better, the Meteor passive allows Fireballs to randomly summon Meteors. So it just feels like a match made in heaven, doesn't it? It also fills in that little weird part of the Meteor cooldown build where you're not really doing anything. I mean, your cooldowns are pretty fast. You're likely to just keep popping meteors anyway, but you're still sometimes waiting for something to happen. With this, you're not waiting for anything to happen. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of minutiae to mind. I actually really like this style. The hero of the day is, of course, Meteor with the power of 16 ranks and 200% weapon damage, which is pretty good, I gotta say. Mine's got a 4-second cooldown, but that can be improved with better gear. You can get it up to 20 with a specific tuning stone, but that is a legendary tuning stone, unique tuning stone, and thus is pretty much impossible to get. Well, 5% chance if you keep running Echo of Malphas, but anyway, it's pretty strong. And now you don't have to wait for your meteors or your teleports to go off cooldown for more consistent stuff. You've got Fireball. Now here's Fireball. It's got a 56% chance with all my buffs. Well, not including the lucky hit while you have a barrier buffs and not perfect rolls, of course. It does an okay amount of damage, but the important part here is the lucky hit chance, the relatively high lucky hit chance among core skills for the... It might even have the highest one among the Sorceress's core skills. But then there's Gloves of the Illuminator, which makes it bounce. Now that looks absurd. We couldn't have had a Fireball that just explodes thrice and then call it a day. No, it has to bounce. But not only does it have a lucky hit to restore a lot of your primary resource, it does mean that you get to hit thrice with 1 Fireball, which means 3 times to roll a, well, let's say like a 4%, 5% chance to throw down a Meteor. If that sounds low, well, I've seen a lot of crits, because 5% is like a critical hit, a natural 20, if you will, and we get to roll 3 dice for it, and that's pretty good. And Meteors themselves have a lucky hit, so they can keep training those down. So this is a bit of a high rolly build, but it doesn't have to be. You can view Fireball as like your mainstay, as your, oh my god, you could view Fireball as your basic attack of sorts? That's not even true. Fireball is your quote-unquote spender, and Meteor, as well as your other cooldowns, thanks to the Prodigy aspect, which gives us mana every time we use a cooldown, all of those become generators. So you have this endless cycle of firing off fireballs, which, by the way, also gives you damage reduction thanks to one of our passives, potentially summoning meteors, and then you can cast meteors to refill your mana and then shoot more fireballs. It's a little nutty. I like it. I like it a lot. So now we have a build that is defensively sound thanks to Teleport and Soul Brand, which I do run, but that's an alternative build. That's an alternative option for the chest piece. Looks very cool. Has things to do all the time, and even has like a bit of strategy to it, since you want your barrier up as often as possible to protect you, as well as to activate certain traits. You have to like count 3 seconds before you use the next ability, or manage your mana so that you always have a cooldown available to refill the bar, so you can unload on your fireballs and potentially proc more meteors. So it's like a super engaging build, which I like. And don't get me wrong, I sometimes like my 1-button murderers, like, Hota, but I also like being engaged sometimes, like, when my head is in the right space, and this does it. It's excellent at clearing because of it's meteors and fireballs. If there's anything that's like in the cultural milieu as things that ruin entire rooms, it's those 2 things. But no build is perfect, and this build is awful, absolutely awful at single targets. We want to roll dice as much as possible to proc, and the more dice we roll, the more effective we are. So the more hits we do, the more lucky hit chances we have to proc, and so on and so forth. With a big single target, not only does our meteor have a chance to miss, because that's just how that works. Sometimes they'll move around, and a big target like a boss does not get stunned or stay still. And our attack range is actually kind of large, and then you have to put yourself in the right spot to get 2 fireball hits on them. Yes, it's possible to optimize your player against them. You're not going to have any trouble against the Uber bosses, but like Nightmare Dungeon bosses, late levels, oof, it's going to be a bit of a hinky situation. That is all to say that single target bosses kind of rough. But the good news is we have vaults, and vaults always end in a little horde battle in a trap filled room, and we're really good at dealing with that. By the way, the Son of Malphas is a great example of how poor we're gonna deal with a single target. I spent like 4 minutes on this guy, and it's not looking so hot. I'm trying to think of an alternative build, and I think I have one, but that's for another video. Most people, and I think for most situations, especially if the event of this season is a race and efficiency rather than a straight up boss fight, this might still have a chance at doing extremely well. So it's very much worth the time and investment into building it. I mean, not that we can kind of target farm things, but you shouldn't be too disappointed to find a Starfall Coronet is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, I think that basically covers it. We've got defensive tools, get barrier up, shoot fireballs, shoot meteors, use meteor to refill mana, and then shoot more fireballs, which will proc more meteors, and the cycle continues. It's all beautiful. It's all great. We also have cooldown stuff in Ice Blades. Oh, and our Seneschal does what every other Seneschal does, which is use Tempest to apply effects and defense and use Flash of Adrenaline. Like, unless you're trying to abuse a mechanic on the Seneschal, that's basically the build for most people. There are very niche builds, of course, but that's it. Anyway, full link in the description below if you decide to skip out on the rest of the video. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoy the build link. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, do all those nice things and more. Anyway, rest of you, gears, aspects, Seneschal, Paragons, and skills. Let's get started. Before we get to it, I would like to remind people that this is not an early game build. Early game builds are closer to like chain lightning, arc lash. Arc lash is not actually terrible, even though you think that it requires a lot of stats to go right. It handles very well even without it, especially if you happen to drop a pain gorger. I'm hoping to drop a good one eventually, but you know, that is neither near nor there. If you're at the end game and you're looking for something to build towards, this is definitely an option. Anyway, it does have a lot of unique stuff. The good news is none of them are Uber. First two are the Starfall Coronet and the Gloves of the Illuminator, which we've discussed briefly earlier. The Starfall Coronet improves your meteor, turns it into a cooldown ability rather than a mana ability, which is great, and improves the value of your enchantment and enhancement effects. Gloves of the Illuminator is weird because it makes your fireball... I don't like it. I don't like the look of like, bouncing fireball. That is not the image I've had of the fireball. And yet, it's the best option here. It comes with 3 ranks of fireball. Look, I know it says 4 ranks of fireball, but I've never seen it. It's probably true though, and I just have that much luck. Both are pretty much mandatory on the build because they make it work. Starfall Coronet is very much farmable from the Beast in the Ice, and Gloves of the Illuminator are, well, what do you know, also farmable from the Beast in Ice, so, you know, get to it. Oh, and, well, Gregor, but, you know, you're probably on the way there to try to get some Duriel runs anyway. For the chest piece, you have 2 options. One is Soul Brand, and the other is Raiment of the Infinite. Raiment of the Infinite should be familiar to a lot of people. It's a very aggressive chest piece that also improves your teleport. While teleport cooldown is a bit longer, it does pull things in and stun them, which activates a lot of things from our control legendary Paragon glyph, to, well, just stunning and CCing them and curling them up for a very, very nice fireball. Meteor. I guess both. Both is good. It also gives you 2 ranks of the Glass Cannon passive, which I wish it didn't. Now, normally I wouldn't wish for damage to not be there, but Glass Cannon kind of makes us a bit squishy. And by a bit squishy, I mean enough for me to notice. Enough for me to be like not that comfortable running around just shooting things the way I want to. So the alternative for people like me who are a little bit iffy on the skill side is Soul Brand. Soul Brand gives us extra lucky hit chance while we have a barrier, improves our barrier generation, which I guess is something, improves our maximum life, gives us some damage reduction against close enemies, and allows our healing potion to give us a barrier, and gives us up to 20% extra damage reduction. I find this slightly better than a custom legendary chest piece. Although if you have it, a legendary chest piece with the ever-living aspect and stocked up, you know, to the brim with defensive stats is also very much good. But I like the ability to just pop a barrier. I like the extra life. I like the lucky hit chance with a barrier. Coming up next is our boots and our pants. Our pants are the juggernauts. Full defensive stuff here, except for the 4 ranks in Meteor, of course. Juggernaut for the extra armor. Our evade has increased cooldown, but we also have teleport, so it doesn't hurt us that much. Esu is just here, well, because it increases critical strike damage. It makes things cheaper. It's just an excellent pair of boots. It gives us everything we want. For our hands, and by hands I mean weapons, we've got the Stormswell wand as well as the aspect of Shattered Stars. Stormswell just increases our damage up to 30% when we are hurting vulnerable enemies while we have a barrier. And thanks to, well, everything, including our Seneschal, everything is basically vulnerable. And we almost always have a barrier thanks to our 5 cooldowns, as well as the Soul Brand if you are wearing it. Shattered Stars is a great way to increase the damage of Meteor, give us an extra bit of burn as well, and generally expand the amount of damage that we are doing to a wide area. The last 3 should come as no shock to anybody. 3 curses for your amulet to increase our critical strike damage for both Fireball and Meteor. Prodigy Circle, Prodigy Aspect rather, or Aspect of Prodigy, which one is it? Anyway, gives us mana back on each cooldown, and Talarash's Iridescent Loop because it is basically mandatory. Now, there's an argument for replacing Prodigy with a Jefal and putting on tie bolts and putting on a legendary chest piece to put on your Juggernaut or Disobedience if you're feeling a little spicy. But I prefer the Prodigy Circle for the extra consistency, so I'm not caught with my pants down waiting for cooldowns, which is the thing I wanted to avoid by adding Fireball to the mix. It's time for our little buddy, the Seneschal. Damn, messed up rhyme. Look, we ain't thinking out of the box on this one because we really don't need to. Tempest, Breaking Support, and Safeguard. Oh, and Arcing Support, and Flash of Adrenaline for the other one. Hooray! Yeah, that's it. That's it. But for those of you who don't know what that is, Breaking Support allows us to destroy enemy barrier effects, which is nice, but it's more important that it makes things vulnerable 100% for 2 seconds. Well, 100% chance to make things vulnerable for 2 seconds. Arcing to make sure that it applies that effect as much as possible, and since it shoots at a wonderful 0.8 seconds, we have Safeguard Support to keep our defenses up through the 15% damage reduction provided. And a Flash of Adrenaline just is a straight up 20% damage bonus, and with Tactical and Duration Support, it has a duration of 12 seconds and a cooldown of 12 seconds, which means there's a gap of 1.5 seconds to casting time for it to go off. So yeah, you basically almost always have 20% damage up, and that's pretty cool. I added Fortify Support because there's literally nothing else that can be there except maybe the the attack speed support to make it cast faster, but that seems like a waste. I'd rather have the Fortify, honestly. If you get the Tuning Stone that improves its efficacy by 150%, Flash of Adrenaline is where it's gonna go. Remove the Fortify one. Okie dokie, that's great. It's time for Skills and Paragons from Past Pat. Take it away, Past Pat. Okie dokie. Skills. Firebolt is here to lead to its bigger brother, Fireball would be destructive. Fireball upgrade, which increases its critical strike damage when it hits at least 3 enemies. And by the way, if I didn't mention it earlier, critical strike damage is our main damage source. Vulnerable is also there because we apply it very, very well, but it's mostly critical strike damage. So just keep that in mind. We don't have overpowers, so we gotta focus on those two. Potent Warding is here just for like extra defense. Yeah, and because there's 2 points here, I guess you can move it around if you want to here or to here, but I like it here just for the extra little bit of percentile defense. Flame Shield into Enhanced Flame Shield. There's an argument to remove Flame Shield, not Flame Shield entirely, but Enhanced Flame Shield, but the movement speed is often negligible for a lot of people and can actually mess you up if you're trying to do minute movements because it's a little faster than you expect. However, I am a huge fan of it because it synergizes with Esu. And since we're not running the Elementalist aspect, which increases our critical strike chance, we're going to want this. I think we're not going to hit the 100% critical strike chances easily, or if at all. Teleport into Shimmering Teleport. I don't care what your build is. This is probably going to be in it one way or another. 3 ranks to the Glass Cannon, 1 to Elemental Attunement. Oh boy! No ice armor. Why? Because I'd rather have ice blades and its cooldown potential as well as lightning spear and its stun potential, which is great for activating our control node, control Paragon glyph. There's also Align the Elements into Mana Shield, which is now active because we're spending mana on Fireball as well as Protection for the extra barrier. I probably mentioned this in the gameplay section, in the base section, but the thing with what I like to do personally is rotate cooldowns, not only so that our Prodigy aspect doesn't get wasted, and we don't go overflowing and we run out of mana, but to cycle the barrier as much as possible. Like if it's to make sure that we always have an extra line of defense. We don't want all our cooldowns off, because that would mean we won't have a barrier, we won't have an extra layer of protection, our Storm Swell won't be active. It's generally a lot of bad news. 16 ranks into something is pretty funky, right? It's also like 8% damage per... Yeah, it's 8% like damage per node, so that's pretty cool. Wizard's Meteor, of course, into Stunning 1E. I'm sorry, Immobilize. It's late, I had coffee, but it's still late. So that's cool. Let them hit for the Immobilize, get them hit with the Hard Devouring Blaze, that is now at 60% extra bonus damage, 3 points into Inner Flames for the extra damage. Of course, Crippling Flames for the extra Immobilize later on. And I mean, this is optional, but here's the thing. Since I like running Soul Brand, you might not want to run Soul Brand. You might go for the Raiment alternative, and that's totally fine. I just prefer the safety when I'm, just running around doing things. I'd rather just not die. So, the potion no longer heals. Let's check that out again. Herald of Malphas approaches. Yeah, your potion no longer heals instantly. Instead, it grants a barrier. So, that's cool, but also it gives us like a protection. So we have the heal over time, if I remember correctly, if I've been observing it correctly. But we don't have that instant heal, and I want a little more passive heal to make up for it, and Warmth was the way to go for me. Also, we like being healthy, and we can't rely on our potion all the time. I mean, you can, but like it's a limited resource, and sometimes you're gonna have to keep jamming it just when you get poisoned and some nonsense happens. But the point is, I like it a lot. And then Esu's Ferocity, of course, for the extra damage bonus. Now on to Paragons. Okie dokie, skills and Paragons. Well, there's the Paragons part. If you're here from the Meteor video, well, it's gonna look real familiar. Elementalist here to increase our damage whenever we deal fire, cold, or lightning damage. And that's gonna happen a lot with our Ice Blades as well as our Lightning Spear. And this also improves the non-physical traits, as like our resistance to all elements as well as our non-physical damage. Move on straight up to Pyromaniac for that sweet extra critical strike chance, as well as bonus direct damage. Yes, direct damage equal to 10% of your damage with fire, bonus up to 30%. Yay, we maxed that out. Then we put on Pyromaniac to improve the value of everything that has fire on it, including mini nodes. So that's a lot of extra damage. We don't need these 2 nodes, but at least in this build, at least in the printed max roll build, because our fire resistance is already super duper maxed out. But if you need it because your fire resistance is not maxed out and you are out of gem slots, well, put her there. Frigid Fate, of course, straight up to get the vulnerable bonus damage as well as cold resistance. With these 2, we're usually at the goal is to have 2 resistances maxed out before you put on gems on your jewelry, so you can fill in the jewelry slots with the right gems to complete your all resist. Anyway, just fill those out and then head on straight to Enchantment Master for the even more resistance to all elements. Oh yeah, and we put on Reinforced here to further improve the Paragon nodes, which we also do with Tactician for the extra damage after casting a defensive skill, and we do that a lot. And we also buffed up our elemental balance as well as our Erudite, increasing our resistance to all elements as well as our non-physical damage. Head on straight up to Burning Instinct, where we put on Destruction. It has the most dexterity nodes. I want to say it has the most dexterity nodes. Actually, this is priority better. There you go. That's priority better. Because I prefer to have more Infinster, obviously. And well, we don't really care to have like extra damage reduction from burning enemies and damage to burning enemies. I know that is nice, but these are the nodes that I want active, and we won't always have all the stats for it. Specifically rather in this build. I didn't, but your gear might allow you, so you might want to shuffle it around if you can activate your 5th Paragon node, because the node requirements do increase the later the node is on your overall Paragon board setup. Then head on straight to the left for Ceaseless Conduit. Pick up Control for the extra damage to controlled enemies, and, well, we don't care about the lightning damage, but we want that extra dexterity to maximize this. Now, we only have Lightning Spear for the stun, but even when the stun isn't active, and it's active most of the time, you still have plus 145% damage to crowd control enemies, which I believe is welcome, since if they're not stunned, they're getting immobilized. Which is, by the way, a huge shame that it's not part of Control. I don't know why, but that is what it is. Set on straight up to Static Search. I do not care about the Paragon nodes. I just care about having slot for Flame Feeder for the extra burning damage. Well, the extra damage to burning targets, at any rate. Anyway, back to you, future Pat. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching. Join us next time for when I make a worse version of a Meteor build, because I have a really dumb idea with Hydra. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope the build is useful to you in some way. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell. Do all those nice things and more. They will help me out a lot. I'm Patinator. I'll see you later.